Day 164. Major Stillman was sitting in his Jeep on the gravel road at the base of the dam, just outside town. He was rapidly growing perturbed that Tyler Hobbs was late and making him wait. The truth was that Tyler was questioning the allegiance that he had made with the Major. He was in no hurry to get to this morning's meeting. He kept replaying the exchange that took place at last night's board meeting between the Major and Carl Fairley. He remembered early on when the military first established a presence in the region, feeling contempt for Carl for working with them. He and Carl were never really close, but he knew him to be a stand-up guy, a patriot, and someone who always had the best interest of his community at heart. For him to ally himself with this occupying force was unthinkable. When Bailey Bezio first approached Tyler about forming a resistance group, Tyler was all for the idea. Later, when Bailey discussed his agenda of attacks and violence, Tyler's first reaction was to shut it down. He explained to Bailey that he envisioned the group taking a more passive stance. He wanted to put up blockades on the tracks to stop the train. He wanted to sneak into the military camp and steal their fuel supplies and contaminate their water storage. He wanted to do things to slow them down and focus their energies and efforts onto more basic issues. No, Bailey insisted. That would only serve as a thorn in the lion's paw. Bailey told Tyler, if you want to kill a snake, you cut off its head, not its tail. We are up against an enemy that has superior numbers and superior weaponry and firepower. If we want to be effective, we must fight decisively. We must strike hard and fast. Get in, do the maximum amount of damage, and get back out as quickly as possible. Tyler went along with Bailey, as he had done during most of his life. Now Tyler was seeing in Carl Fairley another way. He saw a man committed to the same cause, but engaging in the fight in a completely different manner than he and Bailey Bezio had done. As Tyler sat at the kitchen table drinking his coffee, he sorted through all the thoughts and feelings that he now had. He tried to make sense of it all. The result was this growing feeling of disdain for Major Stillman. Tyler started to see that the Major had his own agenda, one he had not shared with him. He started to realize that the Major was using him and his group for that agenda. No, Tyler Hobbs would not be attending today's meeting at the dam. As far as he was concerned, his days of serving Major Stillman were coming to a close. After the group at the church ate breakfast and started to break off into their various work details, Pastor pulled Greg aside. The two men went into Pastor's office. Pastor sat behind his desk, and Greg took a seat on the leather sofa opposite the desk. Pastor briefed Greg of what had transpired at yesterday's board meeting. I knew this was going to happen, Greg said. The military comes in and takes over. Next thing you know, they're running everything. Greg shot up off the sofa and started pacing back and forth. He was getting steamed. Pastor just watched as Greg became increasingly worked up over the issue. I talked to Carl earlier, Pastor told Greg. He's moving their horse breeding operation up to the camp. Major Stillman made remarks to him about commandeering horses. Carl is adamantly opposed, as you can well imagine. Greg looked at Pastor and said, You're on that board, you and Pastor Patel. Isn't there anything you could do about this? Can't you vote the military out of our affairs? We were better off when we were fending for ourselves against marauders. We will be slaves before you know it. I don't think it'll come to that, Pastor said to Greg. You're darn right it won't come to that. It's time to fight, Greg said. Then he said almost the exact words that Carl had used with Major Stillman just the other day. I'll die on my feet before I serve on my knees, Pastor. I don't know about anyone else, but this is the hill I choose to live or die on. Period. Well, don't put the cart before the horse, Greg. We're having a meeting of the Board of Governors without the Major's presence, so all can speak freely. We will consider all our options and decide on a direction that's best for the whole community. Yes, Pastor, and while you're doing that, I'll be down in the armory, considering all my options and deciding on a path that's best for me and anyone else who wishes to join me, as I check all our weapons and re-inventory our ammo supplies. Oh boy, Pastor almost said out loud. Before Greg walked out, Pastor stopped him. Greg, can you send a couple guys with me out to Carl's hunting lodge? I'm going to see if they need anything from us, make sure they're okay, and let them know that we support them. Yes, said Greg. As a matter of fact, I'll go with you myself, and we'll take Steve. When do you want to leave? Oh, I'll let you know. Soon. What's going on with Callie and the kids? Pastor asked Greg. She's going to go with Roger. She jumped at the chance when I mentioned it to her, Greg said. Okay, as soon as she's ready, let's get her out to the Roger. The less time he spends camped out on the trail, the safer he'll be. Besides, I'd like to get her underway before anything else happens to put off her trip again. I don't think she could take another postponement. Give them 3 horses, and pack some food and water and blankets, and give her a tourist judge out of the armory and some ammo for it and a crash course on how to use it. Will do. And by the way, she's ready to go now. She was planning on taking off tomorrow early morning, said Greg. Well, said Pastor, let's bring her on our way out to Carl's. Greg nodded and left the office. Buddy Tanner, lying prone on the ridge where they had been camped the last few days, watched through his monocular as Lee staggered toward the post on the train platform. Lee was an alcoholic who had reformed years earlier. He hadn't touched a drop in over 15 years. He poured bourbon on a rag and smeared it all over his neck and arms and shirt. When he stumbled into the post, he reeked of it. He bumped into a display case, knocking it over. The clerk shouted at him to get out. He glared at him and picked up a sack of beans and tossed it through the front window, sending shattered glass everywhere. 3 soldiers on duty on the platform ran in to investigate. When they approached Lee, he turned quickly to run away, but stumbled and fell to the ground. The soldiers, highly amused by this, walked over to him, drug him up to his feet, and placed cuffs on him. One of the soldiers told the other 2 to bring him to the constable's office and let him deal with him. When they walked into Carl's office and explained what had happened, Carl motioned to an empty cell and said, let him cool off for the night in there. After the soldiers left, Carl was anxious to get up to the hunting lodge to check on his family. He told the prisoners somebody would be by with dinner in a couple hours, and walked out. Hammer, waiting until the door fully shut, said to Lee, what took you so long? I thought Buddy was going to leave me in here to rot. Yeah, well, about that. Buddy needs you to sit tight in here a while longer. He wants them to think you guys are working alone, for now anyway. He's working on something. I don't know what it is. You know how he is. Tell me everything that happened. Where's Roger now and how many guns are we up against? Hammer debriefed Lee on the events that led to Little Bear's death and his subsequent trip into town. Upstairs from the trading post, the Board of Governors met. They discussed in length the issue of the military's involvement in the region. In the end, they decided to put to vote whether or not they wanted to extend the military presence or suspend it. The vote was 3-2 in favor of suspending it. Leroy McMillan and George Henderson had voted to extend the military presence in the region. They liked the security and the sense of order that the major and his troops provided. Pastor Ish and Tyler Hobbs voted to suspend military involvement in the region. They wanted a true government by, of, and for the people. In order to achieve that, they felt that the military should not be involved. They understood that their presence here had a time and a purpose. They came in a time of utter chaos and brought order through martial law. They had only been here a little more than a month, and the troop reduction and final pullout would probably take another couple months. By then, they felt that the region would be stable enough to allow the Constable's Department to grow into its role to provide police services and security. The entire board was under the assumption that now that they had voted, they would simply inform Major Stillman, and he would have no choice but to accept their decision. In fact, this vote would prove to be nothing more than a minor hiccup for the major. He had the new laws on his side. He didn't take his orders from this board. They could only convey their wishes, which the major would be obligated at that point to convey up the command chain for an order one way or the other. Major Stillman, of course, would have no intention whatsoever of passing the board's recommendation up the chain. He would bury it and continue to strengthen his hold on the region and push his agenda forward. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these narratives, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to my channel. If you would like to listen to the EMp Untold series, which is an extended version of this story, Day 164 will be available later today on my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/worldwithoutruleoflaw. I'll put a link in the description box. Thank you all for listening. God bless you.